Jesse, we got special work to do here, you and me. You've got the body. I've got the brain.
Is the runway clear, Mike?
It is clear as it'll be.
Awesome. Hello, and welcome to a very special Rogue Media Network interview in conjunction with the Waco Hippodrome. I would like to welcome Mr. Jack Sholder, director of such films as 1987's The Hidden, Alone in the Dark, Wishmaster 2, 1201, that's my personal favorite, Arachnid, Renegades, I could go on, so I'm just cut straight to the chase. Today we are discussing A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Freddy Krueger is back on Elm Street. Watch out for him. He'll be in your neighborhood soon. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 2.
You are all my children now.
Freddy's Revenge.
Which came out in 1985 and which celebrates its 40th anniversary exactly 1 month from today, on November 1st. Thank you so much for being here, sir. Definitely a pleasure and honor to meet and speak with you. We are here to talk about Freddy's Revenge. More specifically, we're here to discuss the 4K restoration of the original 35 negative film, which you oversaw this past spring over at the Warner Brothers lot. Is that correct?
Yeah. No, they got in touch with me and said that they were doing this and invited me to come out to check and work on the work that they'd already done. So when I got there, they'd already done the 4K transfer, and honestly, there was very little to do. There were a few little things. In the lab, you could make it darker or brighter or more blue or more pink or whatever, but that was it. Now, you can go in and you can change the color of somebody's eyeballs or, there are all sorts of things you can do. So I did a little bit of enhancing in the opening sequence with the bus going through the desert. I mean, one of the ideas we had was that once the bus sort of took off through the desert area with the kids, that it would kind of have a demonic aspect to it, and so they actually worked on the grill to make it kind of look like teeth, and it was supposed to be, smoke was supposed to be pouring out of it, like a dragon or some kind of a beast, and it was pretty half-assed. But I was able to, for instance, go in and bring up the smoke a little bit more. So the thing that I was unable to do then, I could do now. There really wasn't a whole lot. I will say at one point, the Warner Brothers person who was running things says, you really shouldn't change the way it looks. That's the way it was. And you may have some new thoughts, but, we should preserve it the way that it was. And I said, yeah, okay. If I was making it now, it would look different. But that was the style, and the middle 80s. So the real kicker was the sound. You don't realize how important the sound is. But New Line didn't have the money or didn't want to spend the money to mix it in stereo, so they mixed it in mono. And now I'm hearing it in Dolby Atmos. And also, they have to create something called an M&E track, a music and effects track, so that when it's sold to foreign countries, they have everything is there except the dialogue, and they just dub it into whatever language. And when I say everything, it's not just like door slams and car motors. It's like clothing rustle. I mean, it's the most subtle little things. So they had gone through, because what we had was there was 3 tracks. One was all the dialogue mixed together. One was all of the effects mixed together, and one was all of the music. And so the dialogue and the music were pretty much the same, although now you could hear, like there was a place where there was a gong in the music that I'd never heard before. And I said, oh wow, that's really cool. But the effects, because they're all mixed together, if you want to make a certain sound, like Freddy's nails screeching across the ceiling of the bus, you couldn't really bring that out. But because they had duplicated all of these effects, I could go in and bring that one track out.
Mommy, why can't Jesse wake up like everybody else?
Oh, honey, he's all right. He's just having a bad dream.
The fact is that when you're sitting in the mixing studio, you can hear all of these things clearly. But then when it gets compressed and put into an optical track, it all gets kind of mushed together. Particularly in the opening sequence with the bus, I was able to do a bunch of things with the sound, but also like the scene with the demonic parakeet. So I mean, how do you make that any good? It was quite a challenge. So we did the best that we could, and I always thought it was pretty lame, but what can you do with it? The parakeet. Anyway, with this new mix, because the music and the effects all kind of mushed together the way it was, but in Atmos, the music is perfectly clear, and the effects are perfectly clear, and the dial and everything is completely pristine and separate, the way we really wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And so suddenly, with the music, you could hear it and you could bring it up. Nobody ever said you can't turn it up anymore, because that was always, they'd say you can't turn this up, it's gonna break the meter. And with the music, I watched it. Actually, my son happened to be in LA, and I invited him to come in, and he said, "Wow, that's actually good." It was like the Birds. And I said, "Wait a minute." Because they had the original track on one of their tracks. I said, "Could you play it again with the original track?" And it was like, meh.
Yeah.
Probably
night and day. Yeah.
Like, holy cow, it was really great. So I was blown away by that.
That's awesome. That's really great.
And really, in a way, it's kind of like when they take a Renaissance painting that's all yellowy and dark, and they clean it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And suddenly say, "Oh my God, that purple colors. We've never seen how great that looked." And that little dog in the background that we didn't know was there. Now we can see it. So really, it's the way that we wanted it to be is how it looks now. And the feedback that we've been getting has been, no hype or bullshit, but all the feedback that I've gotten has been spectacular. People were worried that we were going to take all the grain out, but it's all there.
Well, I want to get even deeper into the weeds of the restoration. Please fill us in on the hardware and the software that was used, like all the specifications for all of our cinema geeks out there that would love to know all those little details.
Well, my answer to that is I have no fucking idea.
Okay. That's great.
I mean, I understand 35 millimeter, the
Sure.
film goes and it pulls down, and then the shutter comes in and it pulls down, and it's a chemical process, and I can understand the whole thing.
Okay.
With all this digital stuff, I have no idea what's going on. All I know is that if, I say, make the leaves on the tree a little more green, and boom, they're more green.
Did you restore it shot by shot, like sequence by sequence, or did you kind of move back and forth throughout the film and kind of tweak things here and there?
The first thing was we just went through the picture, viewed the picture without any sound on a studio monitor, not on a giant quality monitor you can buy. And we did some work on the opening sequence, but pretty much most of it was really, really good. Unfortunately, the director of photography, Jacques Sholder, fantastic cinematographer, unfortunately he passed away a few years ago. It would have been nice to have had him in the room. But to me, it looked really good. And all the scenes, there were almost nothing for me to do. There had already been done, the choices that were made to because it came off the original negative. So the process is you shoot film on negative, and then you make what's called an answer print, and that's off the original negative. Then once you got, and they have to color correct it shot by shot, because even though you have the finest people in the world, it's just the light is changing all day long and this and that. And once you've got that all set, then before it goes into release, they then make an interpositive on a very fine grain stock, still adds a little bit of grain, and then they make it internegatives off of the interpositive from which they strike the print.
I know that Wes Craven dropped out about 6 weeks before this movie was to be shot. You were brought in because of your close relationship with New Line.
That is absolutely correct. I met Bob Shea, when the company was about a year old, and I used to do all of their editing work. Anytime they'd need a trailer, they'd call me up and I'd come in and do a trailer or something. And also, I was kind of a sounding board for Bob. I've seen an early draft of Elm Street, a later draft. Bob would send. He liked to get other people's opinion. Sure. And then I actually helped to cut a temp music track for some test screenings. So I was pretty familiar with film, so that might have also been another idea. I was kind of a known entity. Basically, the film opened up a huge amount of business, and on Monday, the head of distribution said, start writing the sequel right now. And it wasn't written by Wes. I don't know how much input Wes even had in it. It was written by David Chaskin, who worked in their distribution, and he pitched this idea. And part of it was that Freddy comes out into the real world in this pool party. I knew Wes, but I never really discussed any of this. I mean, we just didn't ever discuss Elm Street 2. But what I was told was that Wes objected to the idea that Freddy comes out into your world. And there were no rules at that point. You know, as far as New Line was concerned, they just wanted to get a sequel out there with a character called Freddy. They didn't even care if it was Robert Englund.
Unless I'm mistaken, in the very first movie, Freddy is brought into the real world when Heather Langenkamp grabs onto him. Your film, Freddy comes into the real world through inside Jesse. It's really kind of the same idea.
If you don't think about, here are the rules of the Elm Street franchise, because there was no Elm Street franchise and there really weren't any rules. Wes had rules, but nobody in New Line had any rules. When you look at a character, you say, okay, what is it that the character wants? You know, what and how is the character being dead? Well, what does Freddy want? He wants to kill all these teenage kids, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if he has to go, and when you're asleep, he's got to come to you into your bed. But if he can go out with his like 100 kids, how much better is that?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of maybe the logic that they had, and they thought, oh, it would be bigger and better. Once the film came out and they realized that they had a franchise going, there was going to be another one, you know, like on Monday, they said, this one made more money than the first one. Start the next script.
Make another one, that's right.
Basically, if you go along the lines that we went on, it's a dead end, because the whole idea of Freddy is he comes out when you're asleep. But now if he's out in the world, then it's no longer Nightmare on Elm Street, you know?
I also have to think, though, without bringing him into the real world, I don't know that you would have had all the sequels. Like you say, there were no like vampire rules, werewolf rules, or whatever, right? And so you were kind of making them up as you went.
Yeah. Normally when I'm hired to direct a movie, I have time to work on the script. And most directors work on the script.
Right.
Okay. You know, the script may be really good, but there's here and there, and you have a particular point of view, and you want to shape it a little bit, and certain things you want to make so they'll be cinematically. But I didn't have any time. Train was like racing down the track, and I was just hanging on. You know, I was in a state of like high anxiety for the entire pre-production period, because it looked like Mount Everest. It looked impossible. I was just given this script, and they had okayed the script, and my job was, I didn't have time to work on the script. My job was get it on film, do a good job. I said, I think I can make a better film than the first one. I certainly wouldn't want to go in and say, well, it's not going to be as good as the first one.
And you did, in my opinion. I saw it when I was 6 or 7 on TV. It just scared the bejesus out of me, and still gives me chills for sure. While you were in this restoration process, did you have any temptation to tweak something other than like audio and video?
Well, actually, I asked if I could reshoot portions of it, but they said they didn't have the budget. Besides, you know, Robert was too old at this point. No, my goal was to make the film look the way we wanted it to look when we made it. You know, because what I was talking about with the different generations is that we saw the answer print. That was what we wanted to get. Anybody who saw it in a movie theater saw it 3 generations away.
Right.
You know, and who knows what the color temperature of the bulb was in the projector or whatever. So this was exactly the way we wanted it, and because it's now on this 4K Blu-ray, that's it. It's you know, that's the film that I felt an obligation, particularly to the director of photography who had passed away, to preserve that look. This is what we did in 1985. You loved the film then, you'll love it even better now.
Absolutely.
And people have even said, gee, you know, there are a few things that I heard that people said that I never heard before that helped me. And there were, you know, lots of other little things. What makes a film really good is a collection of lots of tiny little details, none of which you would recognize, but the accumulation, suddenly it feels better. I'm enormously grateful to Warner Brothers for A, for doing this, and B, for inviting me in. And, you know, it was great to actually get back on the Warner's lot, which I hadn't been on. You know, I was staying in a hotel, and I was driving up, and I saw the water tower, and I actually choked up, you know, because, you know, it's so iconic, and that's what movies are all about.
Absolutely.
One of your other favorite films, I mentioned it before, 1201, released in 1993.
Thank you for that.
So it was a time loop movie. It's kind of a genre now. It was released just a few months after another time loop movie called Groundhog Day came out. Of course, I love them both. There is a little controversy because the one that you directed was based on a original 1973 short story by Richard A. Lupoff. And there's always been kind of this controversy of who created the premise, who created that genre. Like, do you have any opinion on that matter? Like, since you were
So, I mean, this is one that I did have some time to work with the writer. The story was turned into a short film that won the Student Academy Award.
Kurtwood Smith.
And right, with Kirk, and it was very dark. You know, it kind of ends with this sort of guy who's just incredibly depressed that he's stuck in this loop that he can never get out of. The script that that director developed with New Line is the movie that you now see, you know, pretty much, which sort of turned into a sci-fi thriller romantic rom-com, because it's definitely got humor in it. And I seem to specialize in doing mixed genre kind of movies. You know, there's always several things. So that was the script that I was presented with when they said, would you like to do this film? Why they chose to go that way, I mean, who knows? Maybe New Line didn't want to do something that dark. I mean, it was going to be done as a feature. And then when they found out about Groundhog's Day, we ended up doing it as a movie for Fox Television. But in the rest of the world, it actually went out theatrically. I think The Hidden's probably my best film, but 1201 is a close second.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really, really good. I hadn't seen it in a while, and I always thought it was really good. And I remember seeing it, and like the first 20 minutes, I said, no, you know, it's not as good as I thought. And then it just keeps building and building and building as the day keeps repeating, and it got better and better.
Yeah.
You know, by the end, I said, wow, you know, I'm really proud of this one. I would urge people to see it. And also, speaking about The Hidden, there are people at Warner Brothers who would love to see that restored. So I don't know if and when they'll ever get around to it, but I'm praying that they will, because boy, would that be great. In 4K and Dolby Atmos, the car chase and all that stuff. So bombard Warner Brothers with requests.
Gotcha. So I'm going to ask you kind of a wrap up question here. If we go back to Nightmare on Elm Street 2, tell me maybe one thing about the production that people don't know.
There was one scene that I couldn't direct because I kept bursting out laughing. The scene where Mark Patton is making out in the beach house. In the cabana, and the green tongue comes out. Yeah. We had two special effects teams. There was one which was Kevin Yeager, and he was mostly concerned with the Freddy makeup. You know, and I hired him. They weren't happy with his makeup from the first film, and I hired Kevin because he was a sculptor. He was a fine artist.
Right.
And he did Freddy and a few other things. And there was another group with a guy called Mark Shostro who did like the transformation and the more gory kind of stuff.
Right.
And so the first effect they did, I stood around for over 2 hours waiting for them to get it ready. And I was pissed off because I lose a shot or two now.
Good. Right.
So I said, the next time you wait for me. I'm not waiting for you. You make sure that you're waiting for me. So the next one that they did was the one with the tongue. So they had to put this thing in Mark Patton's mouth. So he couldn't drink, he couldn't eat, he couldn't talk. And of course, we were running late. So he's sitting in his trailer, and the assistant director comes up to me at one point and says, he's really unhappy. He's sitting in his trailer, and it would be really nice if you like went over there and, you know, talked to him and kind of reassured him. So I said, okay. So when there was a break in the action, I walked out, I knocked on his door, he opened the door. This is like 7-inch green tongue sticking out of his mouth. And I burst out laughing. And he had like a pad, and he wrote, "It's not funny," with an exclamation. And so at that point, I was pretty exhausted and a little punchy. And when it was finally time to bring him in, I thought, if I take another look at him, I'm going to burst out laughing again. He's going to like rip this thing out of his mouth, and it's going to be the end of the day. So I stood on the other side of the set, looking through a crack in the door, and I had my assistant director say action and cut, because I was afraid if I said action, I'd burst out laughing. So.
Sure, it was laughing in church kind of thing at that point.
Yeah, well, that's how I've lived my life. I've gotten into a lot of trouble. My rabbi told me when I was young that I was either going to end up in jail or in show business. So unfortunately,
it's kind of
so
the
far so good.
Yeah, I got you. Are there any directors out there that you are particularly watching currently? Are there any that really impress you?
Paul Thomas Anderson, boy, is he good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just like, it's like walking, you know, for him.
Right.
And the Koreans, there's so many great Korean directors. I'm
Yes.
just blown away by their stuff.
Yes.
The movie, did you ever see Train to Busan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, like, just blew my mind. It's so great.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for being here, Jack. Again, the 4K restoration is hitting shelves, I think, this month.
It's already there.
It's already there, and we are going to be screening this film at the Waco Hippodrome, just a block away from here in downtown Waco. So thank you for this interview.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to meet you, sir.
Well, thank you. I mean, I really enjoyed talking to you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Really great. Thank you very much.
All right.
Anytime. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Jack.
Jesse, it's okay. It's all over.